All right, U.S. history students, we are going to begin our fifth unit, which is going to focus on the late antebellum period. So the period of time in history before the Civil War is known as the antebellum era. Unit 4 covered 1800 to close to 1840. We ended with the Panic of 1837, and we're going to spend the first part of this unit looking at the late antebellum era going into the Civil War and then Reconstruction. All right, so what major changes occurred in America in the 1840s? So after Jackson's presidency ends, and you can see that one of the major changes is that our country is expanding. Everything in this off-white area is territory that was gained as a part of the Louisiana Purchase. You will learn about the Texas annexation in this unit with the Mexican-American War, the Mexican Cession, the Gadsden Purchase. And then up here you did learn about the Rush-Bagot Treaty, which created the Canadian-American border at the 49th parallel. And you also learned last unit of the gain of Florida with the Adams-Onis Treaty. All right, so in the 1840s, westward expansion led Americans to acquire all lands from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean in a movement called Manifest Destiny. So Manifest Destiny was essentially the belief that Americans had the God-given right to expand our country from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific. Manifest means obvious, and destiny means future. So manifest destiny is sort of a fancy way of saying it is obvious that this land and all of this territory should belong to us in the future. As we acquired these new territories, Americans flooded into the West for new economic opportunities. The United States gained Texas, Oregon, Florida, and other territories through either treaty, like with the Rush-Bagot Treaty, or the Adams-Onis Treaty, where we just negotiated it, or directly through war, like the Mexican-American War. Changes in the early antebellum era from 1800 to 1840 had encouraged westward expansion in the 1840s. So when Americans were colonists from 1607 to 1783, the western border of the United States had been the Appalachian Mountains. So now keep in mind, in terms of distinction, prior to 1783, technically we're colonists. After 1783, we are Americans. After the Revolutionary War, the western border of the United States was the Mississippi River. So we went from having just the 13 colonies to these now being 13 states and all of this western territory, with the exception of this portion right here. Jefferson's Louisiana Purchase then doubles the size of the United States. And then Lewis and Clark, their exploration confirms the economic potential of the new land of the Western Territory, which just entices Americans to move out west even more. The growth of king cotton and commercial farming led to a desire for more western lands. So plantation owners believed that if a little bit of land was good, then a lot of land was better. Additionally, cotton tended to destroy the soil in which it was being planted. So as these farms started to produce less, plantation owners and farmers looked to the new western territories as potential areas for cotton cultivation. Additional changes are going to encourage westward expansion. So the American system resulted in improved transportation, such as canals, steamboats, and railroads, and increased speed and profitability of farming. So now it was possible or feasible for someone to live in the West and still get their products to the East Coast for sale or for use in manufacturing industries. Population is also growing. So in 1790, we were just under 5 million people. By 1840, the United States population was approaching 20 million people, which is a growth of almost 300%. We're also drastically increasing the number of states. In 1783, at the end of the Revolutionary War, when we declared our independence, we had 13 states. By 1840, we had 26 states, and you can see they're admitted pretty rapidly. Western state populations exploded. So Ohio's population grew from 50,000 to 1.5 million. Even though there was a lot of economic opportunity out west, the journey west was dangerous and unpredictable. Yet thousands of Americans traveled along the Oregon, Santa Fe, and Mormon trails. There's a very famous video game called The Oregon Trail. You can Google it and play. It's quite fun, frustrating but fun. The earliest pioneers that moved west are fur traders, land speculators, and poor farmers looking for cheap land. Soon, farmers, miners, ranchers, and religious groups flood west. And if you look at this image, you can see you have people moving from east to west. You can see people looking west. The west is where the sun is coming up, indicating that there is hope and potential for prosperity. The Oregon Trail led thousands of farmers to fertile lands in Oregon in the 1840s. So the Oregon Trail begins in St. Louis and ends in Oregon City. And like I said, if you have an opportunity to play that game, it's quite fun. The Santa Fe Trail allowed the U.S. to sell goods to Mexico. So this part of North America, all of this kind of beigey color was Mexico. So the Santa Fe Trail, which started in St. Louis, ends in Santa Fe, allows farmers to sell their goods in Mexico. So it's a really good trade route. And after Joseph Smith's murder in Illinois, Brigham Young led the Mormons to create a new settlement in Utah. So Mormons were persecuted in the eastern part of the United States for their unusual religious beliefs, and so they flee the eastern part of the United States for what is now modern-day Utah in order to live free of religious persecution. So if you travel to Utah today, that's one of the reasons you will find so many Mormons in that part of the country. But westward expansion brings conflict with the Indians, such as the Black Hawk War, as trails disrupted hunting grounds and violated previous treaties. So the Oregon Trail, which leaves from St. Louis and goes to Oregon, is going to cut directly through the hunting paths of some Native American tribes. Same for the Mormon Trek and the Santa Fe Trail. The Treaty of Fort Laramie created a vast Indian territory, but was repeatedly ignored by whites expanding west. So this Indian territory, which was granted to the Native Americans, is repeatedly violated by pioneers who are moving west. And this is going to set the stage for quite a bit of conflict with the Native Americans in this period in history and later up past the Civil War during the Reconstruction period.